Starting Be'ezrat Hashem Siman Kuf Mem Daled and Vayoel Moshe. Now that we've explained what's wrong with the svara of the agudah, of participating in the government and relying on gedolim who didn't really give their psak to it, because he says that the organization is really run by the political leaders and they don't always hear a psak from the gedolim and everything. So now he's going to go into some examples of what went wrong with agudah, what they actually did. So take a look. Anybody with a brain in his head, you can see how far the agudah got involved in Zionism, because they joined them, and they want to find favor in the eyes of the Zionists. The agudah members of Knesset speak things that are apikorsis in front of the Knesset. Ve'enam boishim lefarsem divrei aminis bitoneim. They're not embarrassed to go and publish the words of minas that they spoke in the Knesset in their newspapers. So just to give an example of that, I have here on page.
It's kind of like Young Israel. When Young Israel was first started.
So here's some quotes from Agudah Knesset members. From Mishkanos Haroim, I copied it off here on page 8.
So it just shows you that, Young Israel went, the very thing they were founded on, about showing you to be Shomer Shabbos, but just by joining the Zionist government, they went all against it.
So here's Levin, Yitzchak Meir Levin, he says about Ben Gurion, he said, Adam Gadol Moed. Ben Gurion was a very great man. Adam Chazak Moed. Yesh Boy Nitzot Shal Kedusha. He has a spark of kedusha in him. Ashrei Yisrael shezechazeh oimid b'roishay. So now take a look at the next one. Ein b'rtzaynenu. This is also 11, a speech that he made in Tafshin Yud Beis, which is 1952, the Knesset, I guess. He says, Ein b'rtzaynenu lahafchis k'moi nima. I'll just translate. We don't want to denigrate in any way the actions of the Zionist organization and the Sochnut, the Jewish agency, for the sake of Eretz Yisrael, whether in the area of Aliyah, of immigration, or in Hisyashvus, the settlements and security, and the political arena. Just like we give respect to every individual and every group that does something for the sake of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. Okay, so that's another quote from Levin. And this is what the Rebbe had in mind when he said that they speak divrei minas in the Knesset. Okay, next.
I'll tell you what, how can you be a tzaddik?
Next, page 9, here's a quote from Levin again, from a speech that he made, and this was published in Hamodia, the Agudah newspaper, in Tafshin Yud Aleph, 1951. He says, "But Kufa."
Wait, is this the Hamodia of today or a different Hamodia?
Well, the Hamodia English today was started in the 90s, but it was started as an English version of the Hebrew one. The Hebrew one was around since the beginning of the Medina.
Oh. Yeah.
It's in Eretz Yisrael. So this is the Hamodia, the official newspaper of the Agudah.
Are they affiliated with the one in Eretz Yisrael or not? It's separate?
They're, I don't know if they're officially affiliated, but unofficially. They're part of the same movement.
Do they share the same account or bank account or not?
I don't know.
Okay.
Okay, but Kufa Mufla Azu, in this amazing period of history, when it started to come true, the vision of the Kibbutz Galius, the gathering of the exiles that our fathers dreamed about for thousands of years. In this period, this state was established and they started to fulfill the dream of gathering the exiles. So all of us go and thank Hashem for the amazing miracles that happened that we were zocheh to see, and we're thanking Hashem al Hakamas HaMedina for the establishment of the state and the gathering of the exiles. Aleinu ladas, he says, we have to know, ulahazbi latzmeinu, and we have to explain to ourselves that the state of Israel, according to Torah, is a step towards the Geula, and it's a Kiddush Hashem, it's the greatest possible Kiddush Hashem. That's Yitzchak Meir Levin, the representative of the Agudah. Okay, now take a look on page 10. Zalman Yankelevich.
Translation of the whole Torah is a Kiddush Hashem.
Yeah. Zalman Yankelevich, another Agudah Knesset member, Tafshin Tes Zayin, 1956 in the Knesset. He said, Ruach HaTikva v'Habitachon b'tzur Yisrael v'goyaloi, the spirit of trusting in the rock of Israel, obviously copied from the Declaration of Independence language, Moreshes Hadoros,
he doesn't even mention God because he wouldn't approve it. If he mentioned God, they kick him out.
The traditions of the generations beats within us, and we will.
Why don't you read in Hebrew for?
Okay, because it takes too long. We're gonna overcome the difficulties, and we'll find our way, which leads to the coming true of the historical promise and the geula that was promised in the Torah. Okay, and again he says mitzvahs pru ravu. This is Lawrence now. Shlomo Lawrence, one of the famous agudah Knesset members. He said the mitzvahs pru ravu, the mitzvah to have children, davar shepikuch nafshei shalom. It's something that the security of the nation depends on. V'haaretz tali boy. The whole land depends on it. Yiladenu kayoim, our children today, heim hatzava shel machar. They are the army of tomorrow.
How terrible. You're going to raise your kids to be in the army.
And then, like he says, that they weren't embarrassed to publish this in their newspapers. So here on page 11, I have from...
Well, it hurts me to hear how the good member says such stupid talk. One thing, better than the Satmar knew, the Zionists knew it. The Zionist benefits them and them only. And when you praise them, they laugh at you. If you don't accept it, usually they laugh at you more.
In page 11 here, I have a page from the Tzvi Weinman Sefer, the Mikado Etzad Hei Be'ir, and here he brings from an agudah newspaper that was, this is the newspaper, it doesn't say which newspaper, Be'itoin Agudas Yisrael, and this was 2 weeks before the first Independence Day. After, 1949, the first year after the Medina, the first anniversary. So he says, Rak Shvuayim, only 2 weeks, Mavdilim Beineinu Bein Yom Hatzma'us Tafshin Tes. 2 weeks are between us and the Yom Hatzma'us. What? Well, he's talking, the newspaper was published 2 weeks before He'ir in Tafshin Tes. B'yoyim zeh, yisnoises degel hamedina, be'ir v'kfar. On this day, the flag of the state of Israel will fly in every city and every village. Me'al kol binyan memshalti, on top of every government building. Moisad chinuchi, every educational building. U'me'al batim pratim, and on top of all private houses. And then it says, Toshve Yerushalayim misbakshim v'hachin be'oid moed diglei hamedina. Everyone in Yerushalayim is asked to go and prepare themselves flags according to what the government decided and fly them on your roof on Yom Ha'atzmaut. That's the Agudah newspaper. Well, quoted by Weinman here. Okay, back to Vayol Moshe. Ubevina in Vienna, kasher bo l'sham plete Ungarin hum lolim. So this refers to a more recent historical event that happened right before the Rebbe wrote Vayol Moshe. In 1956, there was a revolution in Hungary, and the communists took over. And I have some pages here that I just copied off from my Rebbe book, just to give a little historical background on that. So, turning to page 5 in the Marmakoyim sheets, this is the Rebbe, pages 232 to 237. The Rebbe, the Satmar Rebbe biography, and this is the uncensored version, because in the censored version I had to take out some names.
You wrote it?
Yeah, this is my book, but when it says Moshe porush, the agudah leader, so that was taken out of the published version. They didn't let me publish his name.
Why?
They didn't want to say bad about somebody. But this is what the Rebbe meant when he said that the agudah went to Hungary and did what they did. Take a look. Many Jews had resettled in the Hungarian towns after the end of the war, and they established kehilos, rabbis, Talmud Torahs, and yeshivas. Communist rule in Hungary began in 1949. In 1956, the Democrats in the country, that's the non-communists, attempted an anti-communist revolution. These Democrats were anti-Semites, and they carried out pogroms against the Jewish communities. Almost all the Jewish families in the border states of Hungary, Shapron, Charna, Pupa, Samatel, Rab, Kapoivar, and Sharvar, were saved and brought to Vienna. Efforts continued to get Jews out of places deeper in Hungary, such as Budapest and Debrecen. At that time, the Zionist agency, that's the Jewish agency officially, sent representatives to Vienna to greet the Hungarian refugees and convince them to come only to the state of Israel and nowhere else. The refugees were mostly religious Jews who, under the leadership of their rabbis, had succeeded in putting their communities back together after the war and establishing yeshivas. If they came to the state of Israel, it was clear that they would be subjected to the same anti-religious absorption process as all the mass aliyahs. Surprisingly, the agudah leader of Jerusalem, Moshe porush, lent his hand to the efforts to bring the Hungarian Jews to the Zionist state, though he surely knew that the agudah had nowhere to put them and they would fall into the hands of the Zionists. In the name of the rabbis and the religious leaders in the Holy Land, wrote Porush in conjunction with two Mizrahi leaders, come to the state of Israel. We are waiting for you with open arms. There is no other place on the globe where an observant Jew can live a religious lifestyle like in the Holy Land. So this is what he's referring to here. Let's see back inside now.
Yeah, so much for a place which wants to draft and really people to the army.
So Ubavina in Vienna, kasher bo l'sham pleite Ungar hum lalim v'anid koim be'erom v'choister koil. During the revolution, when these Jews from Hungary came to Vienna with nothing but the shirt on their backs, hischabru hu agudah imatzionim. The agudah joined up with the Zionists, the agency, lastos ta'amula meruba, to make propaganda b'chol minei tachbulos, with all different types of tricks, ukvia, and all kinds of forcing. B'dvarim, kviyas dvarim, meaning like forceful words, uvamasim, and actions, lahaviyam l'Eretz Yisrael, to bring them only to Eretz Yisrael. Af sheyadu hakoil, even though all of them knew, shenimtzru oid bevina b'yad hatzionim, that they were getting handed over into the hands of the Zionists already in Vienna. V'heim hoivilu oisam tekef umiyad l'mkoimus hachafshim. And the Zionists, when they got to Eretz Yisrael, they brought them into these absorption camps, she'ein sham el aminus akvira, that there was nothing there except for denial of the Torah, v'achilas nevelus atrefus, they ate treif there, v'chilas Shabbos v'chadoyma. V'hoanim ho'ela, and these poor Jews from Hungary, af biroisam achar kachas hashever anoira, shekar lahem, even when they saw what happened to them in these camps, and they went to these non-religious neighborhoods, and lazoiv legamri es Hashem yisbarach v'torasa, and they saw that they were leaving behind the Torah, Torasa HaKadosh Chas v'Shalom, lo'ihaya b'yadam me'uma, v'lo'ihaya lahem shum breira. They had no money, they had no other place to run, and they couldn't get out. Only those few who were able to risk their lives and risk their whole livelihood in order to survive with Shmiras HaTorah. There are very few people who could stand up to such a nisayon. Shel Mesiras Nefesh Mamash. Uvizman Kotzer Nepach Leiv Rubam Minus Akvir Rachman al-Islan. In a very short time, most of them became non-religious. Kishani Minus Damashcha, because it's an attractive lifestyle. Ve'oisan Shabo B'mkoimus Yireim, and those who did get into the from places in Eretz Yisrael, Hema B'tachli So'oini. They are surviving with the utmost poverty. B'li dir, b'li parnasa. They don't have houses. They don't have jobs.
Right, because they have to serve the army in order to be able to work.
At least they are saved from living among the koifrim. But the majority of them, they're living in the non-religious neighborhoods, that the Zionists placed them there. Many of them have no zecher left of them, nothing left. Because they assimilated already. They became like them. But nobody pays attention to them anymore. Many of these Hungarian Jews were in their country. They may not have been big Torah learners and big Rebbes, Hasidim, but they were Pashto Yidden who kept the Torah. And they wouldn't have gone on purpose to go into the hands of the Zionists and become fry, even when they were in Vienna. But later they got convinced. He says, back in Hungary they knew what the Zionists were all about. But when the agudah came out with these public proclamations, Porush came out with this proclamation, with big open letters, with drashas and speeches that they made, and all other kinds of tactics, that all of them should run into the net that the Zionists placed for them. And the agudah said, this is the love of Eretz Yisrael. This is the best place for a Jew. This convinced many of the Jewish hearts that they believed that the agudah was coming to save the Torah, and they went after them. And that's how they ended up falling into the trap of the Zionists. If the agudah would have had places to put them, avuram, or they had jobs for them, or maybe they would have a place to hold on to them, at least in their own domain, and they would be able to bring them eventually to places where they want to bring them. then then someone might be convinced that the agudah might have had a point. Aval ho'emes hu that the agudah didn't have any place to put these refugees. They didn't even have a place for one night stay. They had no money to support them, even for the amount of money for one meal. And once they were in the hands of the Zionists, it was known that the Jewish agency would bring them to these places that were non-religious. There was no way to even find out what was being done with them. Even the travel expenses from Vienna to Eretz Yisrael, everything was paid for by the Zionists. These refugees did not have the power to do anything themselves anymore. The agudah really physically handed them over to the apikorsim. Okay, now I just looked up a little bit because I wanted to get a fair view of this event. So here we have, it's hard to read. This is the Jewish Telegraphic Agency, the JTA. It's a news service that's been around for a long time. So it was around in the 50s, and they have these old articles that you can access online. And here they say it like this.
Why was it printed sort of like black dots everywhere?
I don't know, it's like a very bad copy. These were sheets that were handed out to different newspapers and they reprinted them before the age of computers. Okay, so it says 1,000 Hungarian Jewish refugees arrive in Israel, 1,000 more due soon. December 30th, 1956. Tel Aviv, JTA. The Jewish Agency today denied press reports that only 900 of 14,000 Jewish refugees who fled from Hungary to Austria in the last 2 months are willing to settle in Israel. So you see what's going on. Really, there are 14,000 Jews running away from Hungary. Most of them did not want to go to the Medina. Most of them did not. And the Zionists were out there trying to convince them to go. And then they turned around and they told the news agencies, it's not true. Really, they all want to go to Israel and everyone wants to go to us. It's like this. More than 1,000 Hungarian Jews have already arrived in Israel, and the Jewish Agency is planning now to charter ships for the transfer of an additional 1,000 refugees, who have already been approved in Vienna for immigration to Israel. Shlomo Zalman Shragai, head of agency's immigration department, stated, he expressed the belief that half of all Hungarian Jewish refugees in Vienna will proceed to Israel. Okay, now, if you look at the next couple of articles, take a look down here. The next one. American Jewish organizations intensify aid to Jews from Hungary. Now we're going to talk about the agudah because the Rebbe accuses the agudah of just bringing them to the Medina. So it's not exactly true. There were parts of the agudah who were working to get them to America. Mike Tress, for example, he's going to say now.
Yeah, there was a friend of Mike Tress.
So he says, the Joint Distribution Committee, United Hayas, that's the Hebrew Immigrant Society, something like that, and Agudath Israel are stepping up their activities here, which is Vienna, on behalf of Jewish refugees from Hungary. About 14,000 Jews are among the escapees from Hungary. Of the total, more than 2,900 have been helped by United Hayas. Okay, then it talks about other people, and then it says, special attention, third paragraph, is being given under the JDC program to Orthodox Jews among the refugees. Orthodox Jewry has also been assured more care by the arrival of Michael G. Tress, president of Agudath Israel of America, who brought with him $30,000 raised for Hungarian Jewish relief by members of his organization. So they did have some money, and they did have another plan what to do with them. Take a look in the next article about Tress.
Well, I guess he was talking about the part of the division of Agudah brought him to Israel.
What did you say?
He was talking about the Israeli side of Agudah, not the
right. The Moshe porush, who was from Yerushalayim, and he came there to convince them to go to Israel. But the
also had an
Mike Tress
division too.
Right, Mike Tress did good things. He said,
a division, of an order in one place could be division in the other place.
Right.
They may share the same account, but it's still it's still separate divisions running differently in each place. They share the same account.
Take a look. Yeah. Michael G. Tress, president of Agudath Israel of America, who is now in Vienna, organizing aid to Orthodox Jewish refugees from Hungary, has been refused visas by the Hungarian and Romanian governments, so they didn't allow him into Hungary. Then it says approximately 10% of the Jewish refugees from Hungary would like to emigrate to the United States, Mr. Tress today told the United States ambassador, with whom he conferred. the Agudah Israel leader urged the American embassy to increase the number of American visas being issued to the Jewish refugees.
Yeah, he's the president of the American division, not the Israeli division.
Yep.
Separate divisions.
Okay, so just to set the record straight, he did try to get some Yidden to come to America, and the Rebbe also worked in that area. And if you look back in my Rebbe book, turn back for a minute to page 6 of my pages here, actually page 5, the Rebbe took action to save Hungarian Jewish refugees from Zionist hands. He sent a delegation to Vienna headed by Reb Shimon Yisrael Posen, the Shapron Rav, who had stayed in Hungary for some time after the war and established a yeshiva, but was now in America. The members of the delegation met with the refugees and explained to them the great spiritual danger that awaited them in the state of Israel. And this is from Botzina Kadisha, well, this paragraph looks like it's from somewhere else, but it's from Riona Landau. Now, the Shapron Rav wrote a long impassioned plea to Hungarian Jews not to give in to Zionist pressure. He quoted the Agudah letter and reacted to it. They are not embarrassed to write, "You left Hungary for the fear of the Gentiles. Please do not go and live among other Gentiles. Come to Eretz Yisrael. Our land is your land." Look, my friends, how much heresy and impudence against the shepherd of Israel these words contain. They are ready to bring Jews to spiritual destruction. For almost 2,000 years we have lived among Gentiles, and they have always hated us, but we gave our cheek to those who beat us and bore their yoke, knowing this is the Creator's will until He decides to redeem us. But they have thrown off the yoke together with the yoke of the Holy Torah. So he begged them not to give in, and then the Rebbe wrote a letter also, and eventually some of the refugees, and he says at the end here, most of them decided not to go to the Medina. And a lot of them ended up in America.
We have a beautiful community in America. We function great, Baruch Hashem.
Okay, back to Vayom Moshe. Ukvar nisbayer shelikanes bein haminim sheyesh chashash hamshuchi abasrayu. Okay, so now we're going back to the subject of what happened to those ones who did end up in the Medina.
Just to say, about 10%, I mean, of Brooklyn's population more consisted from Jews. So Baruch Hashem, there's tons of.
I thought it was more than that.
Huh? Or more. I said 10% or more.
Okay, now we've already explained, I think in Siman Kuf Yud Zayin, that to go and live among the minim, that we might get drawn after them, even though you have the ability to leave at any moment you want. That just joining them, even for a short time, is aser, even if you're in danger. It's even something you have to risk your life for. Kishani minas demashcha, because minas is attractive. So all the more so to go and do what the Eretz Yisrael Agudas did, to give in to the hands of the Zionists, Jewish souls, who have no other way of getting away from them anymore, unless they completely risk their lives and their whole life for it, their whole livelihood. So how could they have the achrayas, the responsibility? How could they take responsibility for such a dangerous undertaking? But the answer is, why did the Agudah do it? Because they were used to sitting among the heretics. They're used to following with them. So Aveira Goreres Aveira, one sin leads to another. They lead the Jews to Apikorsim. The voice of our brothers from Hungary cries out. And not only that, the Agudah went so far as to write against the Rabbanim, Yirei Hashem, they tell them not to go with them. This probably refers to the Shapron Rav, who I said he went there and he tried to convince them not to go. So they wrote about him that he's speaking bad about Eretz Yisrael. They said many more insults that we can't even print here. And they dressed it all up as love for Eretz Yisrael. That's always been the way of the Zionists. Everything they do, every aveir they do in Eretz Yisrael, they say this is for the sake of loving Eretz Yisrael. Anybody who's against their irreligious coercion, they say, you hate Zion, you hate Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah, they always say that.
And now that the agudah has joined the Zionists, they also do the same thing, the same scare tactic. They say, oh, you're just anti-Eretz Yisrael. That's the meaning of the pasuk in Eicha that says, all those who honored it have disgraced it. What does that mean? Pashas, it means those who used to honor it are now disgracing it.
But also about Vatavo. So if you come to Eretz Yisrael, you hate Eretz Yisrael because you're mitam being time of the land.
Right. But now he's saying like this, that the people who are Mechaber Eretz Yisrael have disgraced it. Why? They claim to be honoring it. So like you said, that they're the ones who are actually disgracing Eretz Yisrael with all their whatever they do there, the blood that they spill and the irreligious settlements there. The Gormim call it stars that they cause all the bad things to happen. And on that day, that Yom Ha'atzmaut, Independence Day, when the rebellion against Hashem took place, that they established a state without Torah and without Yiddishkeit. Shemisham Teitze Minus Kvir Yisrael, that from there the Minus would come out to the whole world. The Karu Isa Yom Ha'atzmaut, they called that the Day of Independence. Hema Sasi Musmechim. Those agudah are rejoicing.
And that's minimizing avails for the Churban.
Yeah, and in their newspapers they always publish, I guess in the 50s this was true, they published a joyful announcement, and they said everybody make a big celebration, the day that they rebelled against Hashem. Is there anything greater, greater disgrace to Hashem than this?
But by that, Eretz Yisrael justifies everything. As long as you do for Eretz Yisrael, it's okay.
And this pains the heart of everyone who believes in Hashem and His Torah HaKadosh ad katzeh. Now, just to be fair, today the agudah in the newspapers is a little bit improved, even though it's not in Gansen better. But the Hamadiyah of today, if you look under Hey Ir, they have like historical events of the day.
Yeah.
So if you look under Hey Ir, they won't mention anything about Akamas and Medina. It's totally ignored. Okay, but in those times, that's the way it was. Maybe the Rebbe's muster took a little effect. So he says, Katzer hayiriya behachil, the page is too small to write, lachshev masharoyim b'chol tzad v'tzad, to see and list all the things that we see in every step of the way, shalagamrin yigrorim abasrayu, that completely the agudah is being dragged after the Zionists. Hashem yisbarach yirachim aleinu. Hashem should have mercy on us, v'al kol Yisrael b'meir v'yameinu, amen.